Hey, today I want to discuss a topic that some people might see it as a bit of controversial, but it's also a very important topic. And that is, should you combine your finance with your partner when in a relationship? Study shows that about 25% of couples have children without getting married. And some couples marry fast, but they decide to keep their bank accounts separate. Our ideas of marriage and partnership have changed, and so did our perception of whether we should have shared bank accounts or not. It's not an obligation anymore, more like a personal choice. If you're considering combining your finance but you're unsure if it's a smart choice or not, then this video will give you some pointers to decide whether if you like to combine your finance or not. I will first explain the pros and cons of combining finance, then I will suggest when is a good time to combine. And lastly, I will touch upon what could happen in case of divorce in Canada. And my team and I spent a lot of effort in creating this video, so great if you can share your thoughts in the comments below. Oh, and if you're new here, my name is Thomas, here to help Canadians make better choices on retirement, wealth, and insurance. My goal is to make sure you can take one or two ideas home and start making better financial decisions today. If you find this video valuable, please consider subscribing so you'll never miss any of my videos. Let's jump into it. I think it's very interesting to look at the current trends to see how people are thinking about the combining finance. As I mentioned before, about 25% of all couples have children but they aren't married. Still, right now in Canada, the majority of people are combining their finance after marriage, but we can see a downward trend. Especially, millennials living together are more likely to keep their finance separate. In a sense, millennials are the first generation that can actively choose if they want to combine their finance or not. It's great that we have the freedom to choose, but it also creates uncertainty because there's no one guiding us and helping us to make a good decision. Well, here are some advantages of keeping your finance separate in a relationship. Keeping finance separate is definitely an advantage if one of the partners is in debt. If you have any kind of debt, say student loans, you probably don't want to burden your partner with it, so it's easier to keep bank accounts separate. The second scenario where separating accounts are an advantage is when serious problems arise in your relationship. It's much easier to end a relationship if each has their own bank account. Of course, we don't go into a relationship thinking that it will ever end. But if you and your partner fight a lot, a separate bank account has an advantage. And finally, many people prefer separate financial accounts because it allows you to keep your independence. No one can tell you what you can and can't buy since it's your money. It's not an easy decision to give up this kind of freedom and independence. Okay, now that we know the advantage of keeping your finance separate, let's look at some pros of joining bank accounts then. If you combine your finance as a couple, it's much easier to work together towards big goals. Imagine, for example, you want to pay off debts and mortgages. This is much easier if your two incomes combined. What's more, if you and your partner plan to buy a home together, having combined finance makes it so much easier. For example, in Canada, usually you may be able to borrow up to 5 times of the salary as the mortgage amount. So if you have 2 people in the mortgage, then the bank will be able to lend you more. Combined finances also have advantage when you want to retire together. It's much easier to have 2 pensions to fall back onto. Overall, you are much better protected if you combine your finance, especially if one of your unexpected gets laid off or when starting a family or transitioning careers. Thanks to the joint account, you can always help each other out. And finally, probably the biggest advantage of combining the finance is increased transparency and better communication. Did you know that about 20% of the relationship end because of the money problems? The issue is that partners often don't discuss their finance and they don't plan financial decisions together. If you don't know what your partner spends their money on at all, it can create insecurity and lower down your trust. Couples who share an account have nothing to hide. They communicate about their finance and make decisions together. They're also less likely to separate because of the financial issues. Now, as you can see, both options have pros and cons. They are advantage when you combine your finance, but they are also advantage if you keep them separate. So, what if there was a way to get the best of both worlds? It's possible, and it is an option that many couples feel comfortable with. When you take this hybrid form, it usually goes like this. Both partners contribute a percentage towards a shared savings account. Most couples take the proportional earning approach, meaning that the amount they contributed is proportional to their income. This makes it very fair in case one partner earns less than the other. You can also leverage bill parsing, which means that anytime you pay for something, you neither scan the bills into an app or note it down manually. Keeping track of all expenses creates the need transparency so both partners know where their money went. Now, besides the joint savings account, each partner will also have to account for their fund money. This is great because you keep some independence and don't have to ask for permission when buying something you enjoy. So this hybrid version will help couples to keep in balance in both their mental and financial health. Now that you know the different approaches and the pros and cons, let's also look at the timing, because there might be situations where you had separate accounts before but want to combine after all. As a general rule of thumb, people wait for marriage until they combine their finance. This is because getting married is usually a sign of a serious relationship. So, to avoid a complicated breakup, combine finances when you are absolutely sure that you will be spending years and years with the other person. Of course, we can't always predict everything, and unforeseen things can happen. Still, it's generally not a good idea to combine finance after being together for just 2 weeks. What's more, make sure you discuss your finance before you get married and before you create a joint account. Communicating with each other about this topic is so important, but many couples fail to do. If you decided it's time to combine your finance, make sure to choose a bank you both like and set up a joint account together. Many couples also like to create a budgeting plan to define shared financial goals and to organize their finance and spending habits. Of course, there are also situations where combining your finance doesn't make sense. For example, probably the biggest reason not to combine your finance is when both partners have very different philosophy about money. It can be that everything in the relationship works out great and money is the only thing that you don't agree on. In that case, you're probably happier with separate bank accounts. But what exactly do I mean with different philosophies about money? It could be that one of you was raised very frugal. You are in control of every penny that you spend and think more about the financial security, while your partner may be a risk taker who just spends their money as they please. As you can see, this can cause problems because one of you wants to save money and has to feel secure before investing the money into something, while the others likes taking risks. In most cases, your partner won't budge, so just accept them as they are and keep your finance separate. As you probably know, I work as a financial advisor with different clients, and after working with several couples, I found that this kind of advice works for most of them. Most of my clients feel comfortable with a hybrid plan. Each of them has their own savings and hobby accounts, but they also have a joint account for big bills like their mortgage, car loans, children education, groceries, and other events, and so on. And when it comes to a special savings account like RSP, tax-free saving, or life insurance, it's better to stay individual and not to combine them, simply because there's a lot of things to consider when it comes to contributions limit and payouts later. However, one thing that I'm quite certain, please do not buy a place together if your relationship is not set yet. I understand the real estate market is hot and it's easier to get a joint mortgage approved. But what I saw in my past years, when couples break up, they often have to go into the lawsuits because they cannot agree on the property. Which brings me to the next topic. I want to discuss what could potentially await you if your spouse and you go through a divorce. Now, I'm not a lawyer and every situation can be different, so what I'm sharing is for informational purpose only. What could happen if you combine your finance when you are happy and go through a divorce later? First of all, if you have children, it has to be decided at which partner's house they live. If one of you earns more money than the other, the higher earners likely has to pay for the child support. Also, the higher earning partner might need to pay an alimony if alimony has to be paid, and the amount is based on the following things: the length of the marriage, the living standard of the couple during the marriage, physical condition and age of the spouse, and the current financial situation. As you can see, a lot has to be considered during a divorce, and that's more. What if your partner and you have shared assets like a house or a car? The thing is, for any assets that you own together, you have to decide if you want to sell it or keep it. Let's take your house for example. If you agree to sell it, both partners get a share of the money. But if you decide to keep it, you have to decide who will live in it, as both partners have equal rights to live there. Plus, the person who now lives in the home isn't allowed to sell, rent, or refinance the home without the other ones to consent. And I get this question a lot. What if you own a home before you get married? In that case, the other person has no right to stay on the property. Only if both names are on the title, you have to find an arrangement. If it's yours before the marriage, it stays yours. And it's pretty much the same for a shared car or any other shared assets. If you have lots of shared assets but can't come to an agreement, it's usually best to use a lawyer or a mediator to help with the decisions. And if you do need an advice from a lawyer, I've attached a family lawyer's info in the description box below. Disclaimer, this is not an advertisement and I didn't get paid in doing this. He didn't even know that I'll put his name up. I want to do it because I believe in his passion and his philosophy when dealing with family lawsuits. Alright, let's surely recap what we covered in this video. It's your choice whether you want to combine your finance or not, and both doing it or not doing it has its own advantage and disadvantage. Most couples feel comfortable with a hybrid version where part of the money is shared but each has their own fund money as well. There are incidents where combining your finance isn't a good idea, especially when you have different philosophies about money. And while we don't hope that divorce ever becomes an issue in your life, it is worth considering that both partners will have equal rights to share assets, and there are lots of decisions that have to be made during a divorce. I truly hope this video was valuable to you and that you have some more clarities on combined finances now. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and please share these videos to your couple's friends. Plus, if you want more financial tips and tricks to get more clarity, consider downloading my Financial Clarity Checklist. This checklist helps you evaluate your current finance and helps you to find out what you can do next to be more financially healthy. I'm excited to see you inside. Download it now with the link in the description box below. This is Thomas, and I will see you in the next video.